Welcome back to the lab. I'm here with my good friend Perry Yee, former Navy SEAL, CEO and founder of Active Valor, and tactical Superman extraordinaire.
I wouldn't say that.
He actually has his own business. Well, what is your business that you actually do now?
So it's called Fortified Measures, and what it is, it's a personal home defense training company. But what I do is I go to people's homes and teach them some home defense tactics, whether that's some close quarters combat and actually doing physical maneuvering within their home to help avoid or protect yourself against unwanted intruders in the home.
Yeah.
We'll go over security aspects as well and giving them things they can do inside the house, outside the house to actually help prevent these things from happening in the first place.
It's funny. I really, really wish that when people got a gun, instead of just telling people like, hey, background check, because California's a strict state.
Right.
We're pretty strict. Not all states, I get it, are like California in terms of like a 10-day waiting period.
Right.
I'm okay with. I can wait 10 days, not a big deal. But just like getting a driver's license, you have to go get your driver's ed course. And I think that not necessarily that we should be so concerned with being able to pick up a firearm really easily, but being more effective with it. Because the questionnaire when you go in there and you take your gun safety course and you're like, oh, okay, should you do this or should you keep it loaded, or if you have a kid in the house or if you're 18 years old, all of these different rules versus the practicality of owning a firearm.
Right. There's that level of proficiency, which I'm in agreement with. I'm all for the Second Amendment, and I think every American should be all on board with that. And but like you said, I mean, the thing with being proficient in any type of shooting sport, or whether it's casual, professional, law enforcement, if it, for your job, something like that, they're all perishable skills.
Yeah.
And same thing with like a martial art. You can't take a karate class and be a black belt on the first day. So it takes a lot of time, a lot of practice, and the same goes with firearms. And especially right now, the big topic in San Diego is CCWs. Everyone's trying to get their carry permit, which again, I think they should jump on it now before things start to get hard again. But think of all the people that are carrying firearms on them legally that don't have the proficiency to protect themselves, or might have the negligence to harm others around them if they're in a case out in public where they have to use their firearm. Or they have to use their firearm.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It actually scares me more training and having a novice train with me than I do doing live fire drills with proficient people. Like, I feel so much safer. And it's little things like the etiquette, right? When I hand you a firearm, I'm not going to get offended that you're going to check it. And it's just such a forced reflex.
Like the basic rules.
It's just the basic.
They should be
checking. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like a handshake. Like, hey,
right.
Oh yeah, hey bro, can I see their thing? Blah blah blah. And I'll hand it to you. And then the first thing you're going to do is you're going to check it.
Right.
And even though I may have it cleared, I'm not going to get offended by that because I'm like, oh, this guy's being safe.
Right.
He's being proficient. So when I see things like that, that's awesome. What it makes me feel really nervous is that, and this is maybe because it's military, people don't rise to the occasion. They fall to the level of training.
Right.
And so when they don't have that level of training, especially when you're panicked in your house, you hear a noise, and if you're keeping it loaded in your drawer of all places where it's unseen in the dark, and then you're reaching in there to go grab it, and then you have a Glock or something that doesn't have additional safety measures, boom, you have an accidental discharge.
Yeah, and it's very hard to train for that level of stress. I mean, there are some things you can do, exercises you can do beforehand. I know we did a lot of stress test things in the military as well, but it's really difficult to fully understand and grasp how you're going to react in a situation like that. With my clients, that's why it's so important. When I do all the home defense training, we're not around any live ammunition. Again, we're in their home. All the training tools are, they're CO2 based, they're laser based, so you still get the realism and recoil with the firearms, but you're shooting at little targets that you're placing around the home.
Yeah.
There's very little danger and risk in safety, which is great because one, it lowers the stress level for them to learn. I don't like taking people to the range to learn when they're a novice shooter. I want to get them proficient with the fundamentals without having that stress, so they can at least, take in what I'm saying, adapt it, and apply it to what they're doing. And then, we can walk up to doing live fire stuff, because obviously there's plenty of uses for live fire ranges, right? Especially for gun owners, they need to know how their firearm works, how to handle it, how to manage recoil. Being around the sound is a big thing as well, which is also why I don't like to take them to live fire ranges first, because especially new shooters, if they're young, you're around. And it's always the case when you go to the range by yourself, it's fine. But when you are taking people or novice shooters, you always have that one guy who decided to bring their 308 to the indoor range, and it's very distracting and loud.
With his hard compensator.
Right. It always happens.
Or even if you get into a lane next to a guy with like a 12 gauge.
Yeah.
Bro, dude, what are you doing? It's funny. And my wife's very sensitive to it. So I take her with me and she's really sensitive. So I modified a Glock. So it's a 22 on the Glock. It's a Glock 19 with a 22 slide.
Okay.
I love it for her, right? Because it's super light, super easy to use. It's not like overwhelming, but she gets to go through all the fundamentals without that crazy jerk reaction from the noise. Because you can start acquiring these bad habits when you start getting flinch and all that kind of weird stuff. So it's been a really good training tool, from something like that. I'm trying to get my kids into it, but the thing is, it's really nice though, is because like my kids are so used to me having these things out. But also maybe because they see me and how I respect my things, I'm always like, I take my mags and I'm like, hey guys, you know what? Never keep loaded mags when you're cleaning your stuff, just in case, right? Just put it away. And they're, okay, Dad, cool. But it's so often that they're comfortable with it. It's no different than like my stove. When they were little and the stove was hot, I'd have to worry about them touching the stove. Now we're cooking every day, and nobody's getting burnt by the stove. We all respect it. We all know how it operates. So, and we all have to be conscious of it. You just can't walk away leaving the stove burning.
Right. And that's the thing, is you have to take the mystery away. I don't have children yet, but I've trained a lot of families with children, and exactly what you just said. If they teach their kids how to respect firearms, how to, again, take the mystery away to where it's, you don't have that like, ooh, I'm gonna go touch Dad's gun, right? You sit down, you teach them, and again, they're gonna get familiarized with the do's and the don'ts. And respect, again, it's just a big word of what you really need to do when it comes to firearms, and especially with children.
Are you familiar with the Appleseed program?
No,
Appleseed. So there used to be a program through the NRA where they were able to take kids and they would put them on like a 22. And dads would bring their kids out, or parents would bring their kids out, and the kids would get an opportunity at the range to shoot a little 22 rifle, right? But the project was really to get kids acclimated around guns. Because when you look at other countries, I hate when people say this. Like United States, we have the most guns per capita in the world, blah, 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 right? However, on the opposite end of things, you look at countries like Norway, I want to say, where they have, or Sweden, where they have as many guns per the population as United States. But even though it's as popular, if not more so than the US, they're so safe with it because they offer classes required in order to operate those things on a regular. So when people have that level of respect for the firearm, it's not how many are out there, it's how many people are actually, being acclimated to using it, And I think they leave that big piece out because there's evidence of it already that exists. We don't have to be like Japan where we strip everything away. That's not necessarily the answer because obviously, thieves and criminals, they don't follow the law. That's why they're criminals.
Really?
Yeah, right?
That's so strange.
It's random. But and that being said though, and if they are going to have a weapon or a firearm, it's really going to be a matter of who is more proficient with it at that point. basically what it boils down to. And I don't want them to have the advantage. What's the purpose of having it?
Well, I mean, you just look at talking about America itself, and you look at the societal issues that come with it too, right? And I just saw this thing online the other day where if you took out I believe it was the top 5 cities in America that have the highest crime rates, the United States alone drops down to like the 186th country out of 193.
You take out like LA, Chicago.
Yeah, I think Detroit might have been one of them.
Detroit, Atlanta, and New Orleans. Or maybe it was Memphis. I think it was New Orleans. I've seen that study, which is crazy when you really think about it. So then is it really a cultural thing then? Because obviously the gun rules in those specific areas like Illinois, they're super strict.
They're very strict. Extremely strict.
So I don't think it's that. I don't think that you can legislate proficiency.
No, you can't.
And that's all it is. But, also, though, I think at the same time, if people just understood it, right? Because I meet guys all the time, and they have like 15. I got like 3. And the only reason I have 3 is because I have one that I like to train with. I have one that I keep on my carry, and I have one in my home, right? So 3 different purposes. One in my house has always the light on it. It's kind of, like a 19. So it's good for that workspace.
Okay.
And then when I'm out in the field, if I'm going to do some tactical running gun or whatever, I have my fiber optic sights on it. I have a completely different loadout for it. Like my mags are different because it's also a different manufacturer. So it's a Springfield. So I'll run with that one. And then my concealed carry is also a Springfield, but it's a subcompact, right? So, but they're all different tools for different environments and purposes. And I see guys that end up having like 10, 15 different weapons, and yeah, they all shoot kind of the same, but they don't even necessarily understand the differences between them as tools. And I think that gets lost sometimes.
Well, I mean, like you just mentioned, having different ones for different spaces, there's going to be that level of proficiency that's going to transfer over to all of them. But, I mean, when you're training a full size versus a subcompact, or using them in different uses, there's going to be different skill sets that come with it. So obviously you need to, the biggest thing you can do is just constantly train with everything you have. I mean, I got a lot of guns at home too, but I only use a select few as well. But as far as...
I'm super jealous of your SIG, by the way. Super jealous, bro.
It's pretty sick.
Dude, you know what? As a shooter, it's one of these weird things, right? It's like a chef. I have a sushi knife that's sharp as hell, bro. When I use that thing, it's surgical, right? But because I cut so often, I can appreciate that sucker. So when I saw the SIG, I'm like, ooh, and the slide, ooh, and oh, yeah, I need that for my life.
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah,
that was like my little dream package that took me a little while to put together.
I could tell, but because the way that all the little components come together. You know what I mean? You know what it looked like very similar to? It looks similar to Terran Tactical does one. It's called I think they call it the Sidewinder. It's his version of like something like that. It has a compensator on it, light and slide, trigger work, a red dot, the whole nine. Has everything laid out. But I like the fact that the SIGs, they ended up going to that polymer. It's not even polymer. It's like a mix, right?
Funny enough, I'm not a big fan of the polymer.
Yeah, but I don't think it's polymer though. It's like impregnated with some type of metal in it because it's not as light as like my Glock slide. It's different,
but it's still not like the old SIGs.
Yeah,
I when I was in the teams, we trained on the 226, and actually, my first firearm when I got out of the military was a 229, and I missed the full metal frame. I like the weight of it. I mean, usually like the weight is going to be a turn off to a lot of people, especially if you're
running.
You have a professional or a profession where you carry on duty, things like that, and weight matters. But for me, it just felt more secure as a firearm. So with the macro that I carry now, and the grip that I just got is from Icarus Precision. If you haven't seen those, they're phenomenal work. Phenomenal. But
I saw it.
It puts that feel back in your hands.
Yeah.
And that's what I think my most favorite piece of that is the grip, and just because of how it feels.
Yeah.
They changed the angle a little bit. They added the thumb ledges so you can really drive that forward. So man, it's
that what they call that, a throttle.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Like that. That's nice. Yeah. So that goes to the opposite end of it, because then when you're an aficionado and you do train with it regularly, the difference of like having your thumb being able to be put in a consistent place and being able to ride that so you can compensate for some of that recoil,
right,
and then feel that slight, tenth of a second between your shots, because your sight recovery is quicker now. And I think once you get to that level, you start appreciating all these little things that it's able to do. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And then when I go and use my other handguns, it's like, ugh. What was I doing before?
I remember when I was poor. That's awesome. But you don't reload your own ammo.
No. I never got into it. I know a lot of people that do it. It's very time consuming.
Yeah.
And then there was that point in time where you couldn't even find the materials for it. So
I know.
When
Tell me about
big
it.
ammo crisis happening and prices were going, skyrocketed. So personally, I don't have the time for it. But also, I would need someone to be able to teach me the art of doing that.
I'll show you one day.
All right.
Yeah. But it's a catch-22. I did the math. Okay. So I was like, all right, I got to get a turret for 9mm, a turret for 5.56. A turret, basically, when you have the machine, you have all the different components. Right. And so you have to buy out individual pieces. It's like $500. So just think $500 out the gate. 1,000 rounds is $250 now of 9mm. So it's basically 2,000 rounds of 9mm, give or take, just for the turret, right? So it's not necessarily a break even, because after you do the cost of the press, the press is another, with just basic doohickeys, is $1,500. I got like a Dillon 1050. Then you have to add in the auto drive, because you're not going to sit there for 3,000 rounds sitting there. You know what I mean? It just sucks. So I got the auto drive, another $2,500, and now I'm like 4,000 into it.
So at what point in time does it pay for itself?
It doesn't. It really doesn't. It's just a cool factor.
Yeah.
But you know what though? It reminds me of Scrooge McDuck when he has like the money machine, like cha-ching, 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 and it's just going into your 5-gallon bucket. You're like, yeah, that's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah, until you run out of primers. Then you're like, dude, this sucks.
Right.
I got a huge paperweight. So, but with California, especially with having to go and get, the background check to just buy more ammunition, it's just such a Nazi state. But if you're going to be a proficient and you're going to burn 1,000 rounds without carrying, and it's going to cost you, I don't know, 5 cents a round versus 25 cents a round, that's kind of the difference. I think for me, it was just the mindset of abundance. So when I go to train and I'm taking a 1,000 round ammo, and I'm just sitting there loading up mags and then just running through drills, I'm not thinking in the back of my mind, oh man, I got to conserve or anything like that. I just go back, pick up my rounds, boop, 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 I'm good.
Yeah, it's surprising how quickly you blow through ammo.
Yeah.
I was up with my wife's family up at her grandparents live up in Morro Bay. They have a beautiful 430.
I love that area too. That's such a hidden gem of California.
It's really nice. But so we shoot on the property, and my brother-in-law and I were running some drills down there, and I ended up going through about 700 rounds, and we're running drills the whole time. We're not really messing around or anything like that. But over such a small span of time, you don't realize, you're like, wow, I'm running. When you have your ammo can there and it's full, you're like, oh, this is great.
How long did it take you?
A few hours.
A few hours? Okay.
Yeah. But it's surprising how quickly you go through it.
Yeah.
And it's very expensive. That adds up. I just had do an ammo order not too long ago here, and I'm like afraid to touch it. So it looks nice knowing that we have a full stock, but But the thing is, you have to continuously train.
Yeah.
But doing the dry fire is just really
huge. I wanted to punch myself in the face once I finally realized doing the dry firing how much money I could have saved. Like that by itself. Yesterday I was doing dry fire and I have a treadmill in the garage. So I like doing my dry fires on the treadmill. So I'm sitting there walking because how else are you going to dry fire, bro? You're static.
I haven't done that before, so I'm gonna do that.
I'm
now.
all static. What are you talking about? So I get the treadmill and put it left, put it right, and but dude, I have that's my own range essentially in my garage. It's my own. I'm not waiting for anybody.
Right.
I get instant feedback, and I can see when I'm pulling a good shot. You don't have all the recoil unless I'm using the cool fire. Cool fire is kind of a different thing because it has that slide movement, which I like that. I just wish it would last a lot longer. Yeah,
we can talk about that here in a second because there's a couple different things that I use, and I have
what do you recommend?
So my entire setup that I bring to clients' homes, it's not a lot, right? So that the targets, a couple targets, and the firearms I use are from laser ammo.
Okay.
And so basically the targets are a little, plastic device that has a couple batteries in it, and you put on a little plate card. And so you have your little target you're shooting at, and then it interacts with the lasers that shoot from the gun, right? So
are yours Bluetooth, by the way, the one that you use? Does it Bluetooth it to your phone to like show you your tracking?
It doesn't. So there's a couple ways around that. It does come with a controller system, so you can operate, and you can link up to 10 individual targets in one space. So again, I take them. You can put them all around people's homes. You can put them in deep corners. You can put them, on shelves. You can put them wherever. But you can link up to 10 together. And so there's a little controller system that you can get. It's not necessary, but when you do, you can run drills directly from that, where it does track your split times. You have your part times. You can actually set the different. You can change the different settings on the targets through the controller as well. So that's one way around it. The firearms itself they're just airsoft. They're green gas airsoft guns.
Yeah.
They got to be specific SKUs, so that there's a few different brands that they have. So theoretically, if you had one of these airsoft guns, you could just purchase one of the proprietary laser barrels that Laser Ammo has, and you can toss it. Take out the BB barrel, toss it in, and then you can have an operating gun there. But again, you have to have the specific SKUs that it works with. So either way, it's a green gas airsoft pistol where one of the biggest differences for me with the Cool Fire is all the air is stored in the magazine.
Yeah.
So when you run dry, now you can do a mag change, and then this way you can start incorporating mag changes. Yours
has air in the mags?
Yep.
Mine doesn't. I have the one that does the push in the front and recharges.
No, this is not Cool Fire.
Okay. Not
the,
Cool Fire.
The difference with the laser ammo ones is, and that's the biggest difference, is all of it's in the mag. But yeah, the Cool Fire trainers are great because they go in your firearm. So when you want to train with your specific your tool that you use.
So you have that airsoft one that actually has the laser in it? Mm-hmm. No way.
Yeah, and it's they're I have a Glock 19 and a Glock 17.
Okay.
So they're just stock Glock.
This is like nerdy guys talk right now. This is like, but you know what though? Okay, so here's what's kind of funny. So if I were to be an avid golfer, obviously I'd probably want to go to the driving range.
Right.
That's really what you're doing in an essence, right? And then when you go to the driving range, there's putting, there's chipping, there's hitting the driver. There's all these different scenarios that you're going to do in golf, but it's that repetitive fill the bucket, right? So you fill the bucket and go through these different scenarios. And what you're talking about is essentially that at home.
But the driving range comes to you.
Yeah, it's at home. It's like you don't even leave. I was in my robe last night, bro. I probably looked like a nut. My garage door was open. I had my robe. I'm on my treadmill, and I'm just sitting there, and I was like,
yeah.
Well,
what's cool is with the Laser Ammo brand, they also do the AR platforms as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you don't. Pros and cons is so they have a what's called a flash bolt for them, where you literally just take out your bolt carrier group in your AR, put in the flash bolt. And again, it's just a red laser. So it does have a little attachment that plugs in to the bolt, goes behind your trigger, so you get the continuous pull. So that's great because you can train with your AR within your home as well. You don't get the blowback though, so not like there's a lot of recoil with
with a rifle, not that bad.
Round. Yeah. But on the flip side, you can do the same thing where you can get a gas powered airsoft rifle, and then they have a little flash tip. So you take off, the orange tip at the end of the rifle, put on the flash tip that also has a laser in it. So now you're training with the same tools. You get blowback, and so it's kind of like.
So explain something really quick, because I know that we probably blew past this, and it's like a really important thing. You're talking about split times. So what are split times?
So split times are going to be the times in between the trigger pull, right? So when you're talking about follow-up shots, things like that, and so being able to train to proficiency where you have less time in between your follow-up shots, which also mean less time it takes for you to acquire your sights or your red dot again, things like that. So that's where, it's great to train where let's say you train to draw really fast, you get that first shot off.
Right.
Great. But what are your follow-up shots like?
Yeah.
Did one do the trick? Are there multiple targets? Did you miss your first shot? So having those quicker follow-up shots, that's really a big deciding factor as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the. I was teaching my future brother-in-law how to do that at his house the other day, and having the app, and when the app beeps, and then having to do from the draw, to get on site and then pull the trigger. And as I was explaining to him really basic fundamentals, I'm like, dude, it's not how fast you're going, right? I'm like, there's the three most important things: is the size of the target, the distance of the target, and then shooter's ability, right? So just knowing what at that distance, how fast should I be really going? Right. And when you start tracking that secondary shot and third shot, so I'm like, you can miss really fast. Look like they're doing something crazy. I'm John Wick, look at me.
Right.
And you're like, poo, 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 poo. The laser's going everywhere. I mean, dude, just take your time and then hit it and then watch your time. So if it's going to take you 0.75 or 0.85, cool. Maintain the 0.85 until you could do it 10 times in a row. Then try to a little bit faster on the cadence until you start missing. Once you start missing a little bit, then kind of pause until you can do it 10 times in a row, and then you throttle a little faster. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because the thing is, you have to get out of the comfort zone, but there's that in between where you're doing it too drastically and then not enough, right?
If you're hitting pinhole
shots every single time, it's okay, maybe it's time to start increasing that speed. So
yeah.
Which you don't want to do anyway in a human target, right? You don't want to be hitting the same spot. You want to be hitting
waffle them up a little.
Different pieces of the body. Essentially they're phenomenal training tools. I use them with all my clients. It's the first thing we do before we even think about going to live fire, which I don't do with all of them regardless. The only time I do live fire training with them is if they're new firearm owners and they do want some time to take it out and get some at least some coaching the first time around or second time around before they're confident enough to go on their own. Or if they're not a firearm owner at all and they want to test some firearms this way, I can bring us a nice spread of firearms for them to try. They can go rent some and things like that. But to me, the dry fire portion, and then we'll get into force on force is the most important training that I think anybody can have. But I think building those proficiency skills before you put yourself in those stressful situations of being around live fire is very important. Because the last thing you want to do is, like you said, like being around people that are novice shooters on a live fire range. And
I hate being around people that get too comfortable.
Yeah,
that's like my fear. How many times have you had that gun pointed at your face from like a novice shooter?
I mean, I would say not super often, but it happens.
Yeah. I probably have had it happen maybe a handful of times.
The biggest time is when they do well and they get excited.
And they turn to you and they're like, right? They're like, hey, how did that? I had that happen. The guy was like literally my face like this. We're in the booth and he's like, dude. Yeah. And I'm looking at it like straight like this. And Just,
Yeah, it goes out.
because you don't want to jerk. You're like,
Yeah,
thanks, bro.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And he saw it, he's like, oh shit,
Right.
But it's okay though. But that's almost like it's part of it, right? I whacked a major one time when I was enlisted. So we're teaching like a 9mm course, and the guy was he was brought on because he was a dentist. So as a dentist, he came in automatically with rank, right? And so I have a bunch of privates and E2, E3, E4, and we're teaching him a 9mm course, and he was mixed in with them.
Okay.
And so when we were on the range, he was trying to rack the slide. And I remember seeing him with his grip on the pistol grip, on the trigger,
Yep.
trying to rack the slide. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy's going to shoot the guy next to him. So I had my guide rod. And I was like, hey, put down the weapon. And we had our headphones on and stuff. I'm like, hey, put the weapon down. And he didn't hear me. I was like, put the weapon down. I'm yelling at him. And I whacked him with my guide rod. Whack. And he finally was like, whoa, what the, I almost got in trouble for it. So when we were cleaning up weapons and we went back to the armory, I remember it wasn't a first sergeant. It was like a command sergeant major. He was like up there. And he came down and he was like, hey, who was the one on lane 6 with the blah, blah, blah? I guess he must have complained. And so I told him, I was like, hey, this is what he was doing. This is what I saw. Roger that, carry on. And then he told me, like, yeah, the guy's actually a dentist, and he just came on, and he's literally just like has no history. Right. So good, but hey, just be cautious because obviously rank, you got to respect it. So,
but this thing is, firearms are designed for your finger to go exactly where it's supposed to go on the trigger. So you really have to train that out of people. And
that's like the biggest fear. And I've seen misfires even with like expert shooters. I've seen it happen. They just have that really hair trigger. They put it down and boom, on the table. I've seen it happen. So it's just really good practice, at least to just know the workspace.
Right.
So outside of your business with teaching folks on how to be proficient, which 100% support, you also run Active Valor. So what is Active Valor?
All right, so Active Valor is a nonprofit organization here in San Diego, and it's basically set up like a Big Brother program. So what we do is we take transitioning veterans, and they get paired as ongoing mentors to children that have lost a parent while in service, whether it was through combat, through PTSD-related suicide, through medical conditions, as long as they passed away while on active duty. So you have the term Gold Star families. So the Gold Star families are families that have lost a loved one while serving on active duty. So what we do is we run a series of very themed, elaborate,
they're dope, bro,
outdoor adventures here in San Diego, where it gives it's so complex to the point where we really wanted to design an organization that catered to more than one demographic. And so on one hand, you have these veterans that are now able to have a mission again, right? They have that sense of purpose, that sense of duty, where they get to pass down their military experience to children that have lost that ability to learn with their military parent now gone. So you have that aspect to where you're helping these guys just find that drive again. They have something greater than themselves that they're serving.
Yeah.
And for me, being a vet, I had my challenges coming out of the service and not having that mission anymore, and you look at all the veterans out there that are, fortunately taking their lives, and how many of them leave families, how many had successful careers outside of the military. So, there's a lot of factors that go into it, in which we can, talk about that all day. But for me, on a simple level, it's we lost our mission, right? We come from backgrounds where you're doing something great for your country. You feel like you have that sense of service, that sense of duty, the honor that comes with it. It goes away, and it goes away fast.
Yeah.
What's funny enough is like when I got out, you don't realize what you're leaving until you do. And you're like, man, there's a lot of, whether it's the camaraderie of the people, if you had good relationships, whether it's a steady paycheck, whether, you have that security behind you. There's a lot of things that
the routine, just your daily routine.
Right.
It's different.
Right.
It's so hard to explain to people sometimes down to the sense of humor. Like, you can be on the bus on the way to go do some training exercise, and just the shit talking on the bus and the camaraderie, it's just something else. And it's not going to break out people in fights. You know that you're going to walk away cool.
Right.
You can go back and you're live fire. Then that guy's not going to shoot you or jack you up. Like, it's a very distinct brotherhood. And then when you come home and then you find yourself working at a Home Depot or a Costco or wherever you're at, and people are so self-centered, where you've been experiencing this self-sacrificing every day.
And it's hard to understand if you're somebody that has never been around veterans or the military community, like there's a whole different breed of people, It's like our sense of humor is going to be different, or our point of views are going to be different. But it is really hard to understand veterans when you're looking at the civilian side if you've never been around that type of community before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know so many guys that get out and they get jobs out in the civilian world, and they're around kids that just got out of college and have no life experience and have all these first world problems that they're dealing with.
Right.
But they also don't understand your humor, and they don't understand your attitude.
What did he just say? Oh my God.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the good thing about, like, with Active Valor, you have the community of veterans where not only are you serving these Gold Star families, but you're also around other veterans who have, they've done the same things you have. They come from the same backgrounds, the same communities. It doesn't matter what branch it is. You're still the same breed of people. And so now we're trying to build at least a community of guys that can be around like-minded individuals, and hopefully gain some good relationships out of that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. What ended up bringing you to doing that? Like, what brought you to do it? Now, did you start this organization from scratch?
Yeah, so it was me and my wife now, but at the time we weren't married, and I was this was 2015 time frame. I was working at a Force on Force school up in Escondido, and funny enough, that was really my first time outside of the military, and this is 4 years after I got out of service. It was really my first exposure to working with other veterans and being around other veterans and hearing their stories, hearing their difficulties in their transitions, and it was just very eye-opening, right? And for some reason, as a veteran, we all think we're going through these issues alone, that we're the only ones, and it's the complete opposite, where we all have very similar stories with our transitions out. And so we kind of wanted to find a way to create something that gives them that sense of service again. And so, we were thinking about ideas for this nonprofit, and it's like, what does it mean? What's it going to stand for? Like, do we try to get veterans to do community service projects? It's might be great when you're doing it, but there's no lasting impact that you're really going to get from it. So it took a while to figure out exactly what that mission was going to look like. And honestly, it was just a lot of prayer. Like, we sat and prayed about it and just hoping to get some direction and guidance. And, we ended up thinking of the Gold Star family community, where it's just really just a perfect pairing, right? You have these vets that have left their service for whatever reasons, and then you have these families that lost their connection to the service through the death of their loved one. So you're bringing these two communities together that all have a lot of the same interests, and so but now you can benefit one another. And so you have these children with all of the kids in our program, they have all lost the dad in the house. Yeah. And so all of the mentors we have as of right now are all male, just because we wanted to be able to kind of
the majority
fill that loss of the male in the home. Obviously, these guys aren't here to replace dad. They're just there to be a role model, to be a friend. They're guys that have walked in the shoes of their lost fathers, and so they can have that experience and that background that they can relate to. And I think it helps kind of guide what they do with the children as well, and the way they talk to them, the conversations that they have.
And participation, not even kidding. I remember it was last year, Father's Day.
The laser tag?
Laser tag. And I thought to myself that day, it made me become a better father because it made me appreciate the kids that I have already. You know, it was different because here I am giving back, right? And I'm like, man, these are the things that I should be doing with my kids every single day because tomorrow I may get hit by a bus. I don't know what's going to happen. And it's strange to me now that my kids are now getting into their teens and how much more I should really have participated with them and appreciated that time with them. I think also part of that, you know, for me to want to give back, and I've talked to a lot of guys about this, is that they get what's called survivor's guilt. Have you ever heard of that before?
Of course.
Yeah, so that's survivor's guilt, because especially when you start losing people that you knew, and you know you're like, damn, I would have been there. Damn, I could have easily been with me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then when you get out, because I know when I got out, I was like, I'm done. I'm done just because there's no weapons of mass destruction. The Humvees had canvas doors. People are jerry-rigging their stuff together. The gear, I brought my personal gear. So it's like, you know, if knowing that you're going to go to a war against another country or anything like that, you're going to expect the government to give you 100% support. And then you start realizing, man, this is not for me. I'm good. I served my time. But then you start getting that survivor guilt. And I know that rolled into me for a while. It's like, oh, damn it. There's more that I could have done. There's more that I can do. Even if it's not this. And then when you start seeing that a child lost a loved one, that makes it really difficult to want to think to yourself, I want them to feel this all over again. I'm going to meet this kid and then walk away from that. Like it's almost like a short circuit in reasoning. I can't. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It was a really eye-opening and a mix of emotions. Just seeing everything.
Right.
Like
we were very nervous when we first started because, like, on paper the idea sounded great.
Yeah.
Once we got it, but we were like, what happens if it's too sensitive? Like, what happens if, you know, these guys remind their kids too much of their dads and the whole day is a wreck? I mean, when we had our first event, which was in September of 2017, you know, we kind of felt like we had one shot to do this. It was really hard to find the Gold Star families to participate, you know, rightfully so. We were this unknown entity coming to them. We reached out to different Gold Star groups in the region. And honestly, the biggest thing was Facebook, just finding people on Facebook and then just putting ourselves out there, being, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're looking to do. Would you be interested in participating? And so we ended up having 7 families, 11 kids total, come on board for the first adventure that we ever had. And we had 11 vets to pair them with. And again, on paper, everything sounded great, but we had no idea how it was going to work or how like emotional it was going to be.
Right.
And
what were some of the takeaways?
It was great. It was, so what we did is we were out in Warner Springs. We had some private land out there, and we set up a big mission-based treasure hunt. So we were teaching the kids how to read a map, how to, you know,
so sick.
Find the waypoints, how to get their pace count, how to get their, you know, their bearings, things like that. So the week prior, we actually had all of the mentors out planning the routes, literally digging holes and burying what their treasure was going to be at the end. And then we broke them the day of. So a week later, we showed up early. We set everything up. We had all the veterans come, kind of get to have their time as well beforehand. I mean, we always try to give them some time before the kids show up, where they can just hang out, have the camaraderie, get all the foul language out before the kids show up. You know? And they're
when
very
you get a
good
group
with,
like that together, it's what happens.
right. And I've actually been very, very impressed with how well they do with that. And not
it's funny when the kids come in,
slip.
they tighten up real quick. They're like,
and the funny thing is, you know, they're all military families, so like the moms are used to it, and they get the veteran culture pretty well.
Yeah. But speaking of the moms, though, I really like the fact of how you guys pamper the moms as well. Like, it's not just the kids. Like, you actually, you thought about taking care of the moms too.
Well, so surprisingly enough, that kind of came later.
Oh, okay.
We were so focused on the relationship building between the mentor and the mentee that the first event we did, the treasure hunt, they were actually one of the moms reached out. They're like, "Hey, like, can I go on the adventure with my kid?" We're like, "Of course." You know, like, you're handing your kid over to some strangers and we're going off in the wilderness, right?
Stay in your car. No.
Right. So we're like, absolutely. So we had planned on all of the moms. So we let them know ahead of time, like, hey, like, it's going to be a little physical, you know, wear something you don't mind hiking in and things like that. Yeah. And by the time we started, so we, you know, vets came, families came, they all did their meet and greet for the first time. They broke off into small groups, did some teaching on some basic land nav. And when we were getting ready to go, you know, the kids and vets started going. The moms all got up, and the kids were like, "What are you doing?" They're like, "No, this is our day." And they're like, "Get out of here!" So they all ended up staying back. Luckily, we had set up an area where we had, you know, some food for them. There was some wine for them, things like that, and it turned into just like a round table for them, you know. So now every event after, it's the families are showing up. The moms are like, take my kid, you know, there's a few hours of free babysitting, and then they all have their time together where they can share stories, where they can talk about life, they can talk about the struggles they're having, they can talk about the stories of their husbands, where, you know, it's sad to hear that we've heard this from multiple Gold Star spouses in our group is, you know, even with their families, after so much time passes, like it's harder for them to talk about it because no one wants to hear it anymore. They've heard the story over and over and over again. So for them, it's their time to just vent and be there for one another, or just to have fun. You know, they can just chat, and usually there's an activity for them, or we're setting up, you know, spa day for them.
Yeah, I saw the massage parlor, cupcakes and the whole nine. Yeah, so this is one of the few times I've ever seen an organization like that where it was like 3 prongs of benefit. Right, the veterans that are participating, it was giving them a whole new lease on life, like a new purpose for them to play with. And then the kids, obviously giving them that opportunity to spend time with a mentor that hopefully their dad would have been showing them, like land navigation. It's funny that you were saying that because I remember teaching my daughter that. And I'm like, that's so cool. These kids get to experience that. And then the wives, the moms, they get a outlet for them to share with other people. So really you have 3 events kind of happening at one time.
Yeah, it's a lot to cater to. And then there's that, and then there's the range of ages. So we're at the point now, so we just hit our 7th year this year. And when we first started, you know, we had kids as young as 5 with the program, as old as, you know, 18. And so finding things that will cater to all age groups is really difficult and really challenging. Yeah. It's a little easier now because all those kids have grown and they're getting into their, you know, their 10 years old, their early teens, and so their interests are starting to shift a little bit, which I think helps us with kind of honing in ideas. Because we start running out of ideas, man. It's so hard. The
Mark,
two of
I
us.
got to send you a video. Actually, if you could pop up the video here of one of our other events that we did in Carlsbad. Dude, this thing was so sick. Where we did the aliens.
The alien hunt.
Dude, that was so sick, bro. That felt like Universal Studios kind of thing. Like, because... Okay, so it was treasure hunt, but it's at the police fire station training section. So they have these buildings laid out with aliens hanging from the ceiling, slime buckets with stuff in them, and then there's like, there was modules for them to like take apart the puzzles to get the piece, but it was also like a treasure hunt. And then in the meantime, we had aliens, people dressed up in like mechanics outfits, but with the alien heads, and they're doing their thing. And what they have, bubble shooters?
So,
I forget what they had.
Yeah, just to paint the picture for the listeners. So this is like an all-out war. So we had about 70 role players come, and then all the kids and vets are armed with the gel blasters. So you know,
the glowing gel blasters,
full automatic gel blasters. And before, so the years prior, we always had it Halloween theme, zombie theme, like a zombie hunt, where we were using the Nerf guns instead.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
they weren't as bad. They were little 5-shot pump Nerf guns that they would have to reload a lot. And, the role players never had anything to shoot back at. They just had it for 2 hours straight. They just had to take it and just
keep it rolling.
Keep going. And they always did a phenomenal job. But this time around, Gel Blaster actually sponsored that event. They donated all the gel blasters to everyone.
I still have mine, by the way.
And we had so many left over. We're like, let's give them to the role players. And so it was the first time they actually had that force on force element where now they're getting shot at as well.
The buildings had like the smoke machines going, and then they had like all the strobe lights,
the sound effects,
sound. But you're in a huge building. That was a big building.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then there was a separate house that was like the laboratory, and it was all set up like a lab and the whole nine. And then one of the aliens came on the corner. I'm like, oh shit! It was pretty sick.
Yeah,
I was like, wow, that was
that's an
outstanding experience.
Events every year are the Halloween themed ones.
Yeah,
so.
I'm surprised something like that wasn't in the news. Like that's something that I think in particular was such a uniquely structured detail. The attention to detail you had on that was great. And I from what I saw, it worked like without a hitch. You had all the different stations, the kids running across the parking lot to go get their new key, get the decoder, and then go running back into the building looking for the next location. All of it, and there was like 7 teams at the same time.
Something like that, yeah, 7 or 8, yeah.
But just like it was just kind of cool, the coordination, coming back and then having all of us re-coordinate and being like, all right, guys, here's the next mission brief. And it was a kid version of a military op.
Right.
That's basically all it was.
And then you have these vets that are just giant kids.
Yeah.
And it's truly, it was probably one of my favorite events that we put on just because of, like you said, it's a big production. It's super stressful, and it's just the two of us that are coming up with all the ideas. Like we're handcrafting all the things you see, all the acrylic stuff with the etching. That's the wife's at home with the laser engraver, making all these things, cutting all these things, and like the first time we did the zombie hunt, we split the group into just 2 teams, and it was a very linear route they were taking. It was very hard because timing had to be kind of perfect. Or else one team was kind of waiting on another team to do things. So the second time around we did it, we implicated let's split them up into more teams and have them have to come back and forth. So they're off doing whatever they're doing, getting whatever they have to retrieve. They bring it back. They give it to their volunteer at their station desk. They get their new packet. It's fun. They get their envelope. They're tearing the seal, and it definitely had that feel of like this is an op there going on. It's so fun. But
like I said, the subliminal messaging behind a lot of it though is you now have a veteran, it's an adult, an older guy, right, playing with kids that they're just being themselves, running around being like a nut, and the kids being themselves, running around being like a nut. Even as a father, sometimes, because I'm my kids, obviously their dad, I know for a fact if my son was on my team, he would be much more reserved, me being on his team, than him being on someone else's team, the way he would act and operate. So in that kind of scenario, both the adult and the kid are having this adventure really together, and they're having to work together. And even as a father, I don't have that same level of experience with my own kid, let alone something like that. So when I walked away, I was like, man, I'd love to do this with my son. You know what I mean? I was like, this is sick. Yeah. This is awesome. So I wish, and now that trying to get you connected with more veterans, and I know that's probably one of the areas that I know you're always struggling with is the turnover of veterans. Speak upon that a little bit. Like what's some of the best ways for us to try to get you some help or support or somebody who's interested in participating?
Right. So, the biggest thing is we wanted to always have that 1-on-1 ratio. So, we've had pairs of kids and vets that have been with us from the start up until now. So they have built such awesome relationships throughout those 6-7 years. Unfortunately, with with the pandemic and COVID, we lost so many, in just being in California, we lost 19 guys in the span of a year and a half, all leaving the state.
Just leaving.
And so just leaving. And rightfully so, you know, they were small business owners that are getting crushed with taxes, or they had family in other places.
I mean, the kids get older too, and you just need that replenishment of mentee, mentor.
Yeah. I mean, we've lost some kids going to college. You know, we've seen them grow through high school, graduate high school, go up to college. It's been really fun to watch the lives and be a part of the lives in their experiences, and to know that you've been a part of their childhood. It's so rewarding.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we ended up having to, with our events, having guys double up on kids because we were just so short on mentors. We're slowly building that up. And we're almost back to that one-on-one ratio, but we're also, one thing we never wanted to have, which we have, is a waiting list of Gold Star families. So we've never had to advertise, outside of that first adventure, we've never had to go out of our way to find families. They always found us through word of mouth. And then when they would come to us, we would have to now go out to the veteran pool, try to find people to fill that mentor spot. But unfortunately now we have 10 plus families that are waiting to become part of the program. We just haven't been able to have the numbers to, you know, satisfy that. And so
we'll fix that.
Yeah, we're close to that one-on-one ratio. It has actually, it had helped having some kids leave the program, because then we could repurpose their mentors as well.
Yeah.
So we're about there, but yeah, really, we're always looking for good dudes. And that being said, you know, requirements are so basic. It's you got to have your DD-214. So we don't do any active military.
Yep.
All veterans. Doesn't matter what branch you serve. Doesn't matter if you were combat, non-combat. But with all new applicants, we go through a phone interview, or we'll meet them for coffee or something. Background checks, and
can't have axe murders in there.
Right. But the thing is that we always tried to keep the veteran bases on a referral system only. And that being said is because, you know, people can be good interviewees.
Yeah.
And interviewers.
Yeah.
They can be good in interviews and they can pass background checks, but maybe they're not great with kids.
Yeah.
Or just maybe they're very reserved. And so we always wanted to have that referral basis, just because at least we knew one person in our group that had, maybe they served with that guy, or they work with that guy, and they have some type of a relationship where they can vouch for who this person is, and, you know, give us some personality traits that may not come across in an interview process. So
yeah. Have you ever thought about cross collaborating with other organizations?
Yes, we have in the past, but it has to be a mutual benefit. We've worked with some organizations in the past where it was more for them, and you know, we put in a lot of work for an outcome that affected them more. Yeah. So as long as it's a mutual benefit, I mean, we're all for working with other organizations, and as long as we can help them in some shape or form, but they can help us just as much. Whether it is, hey, we can bring some people over. One of our mentors that's been with us from the start, he actually had a nonprofit organization that he ran in San Diego as well, working with veterans. It's called Triple Adventures, and they would take vets outdoors, get them back around campfire therapy and getting around other veterans. And a lot of our mentors came from that. So he was like, hey, I work with a lot of vets. And so our current mentors now, I mean, a ton of them came from that organization. And but yeah, we've worked with some in the past, and it's just a matter of, you know, how that synergy is, and you know, what we can do for each other. I mean, we also don't want to just take from people and not providing any value as well. So again, it's challenging because we're a 2-person operation. You know, we don't have a staff, we don't have a team doing this. It's me and my wife. She has a full-time job. I have my other business. So it's, you know, we've been running this thing for 7 years. It's literally a labor of love. At this point. It's been challenging, but obviously, like, the reward is so much greater than the stress that goes into it. But yeah, no, we're always looking for good dudes, and we just ask them. Sadly, now is when we get new veterans, we have to ask if they plan on leaving California within the next couple of years, and that's kind of a deal breaker for us because we don't want to have such a high turnover rate.
I could just imagine too, if you get a kid, he's in junior high or something, and then you're going to have to rotate through another mentor.
Right.
You're giving him what's it called? Abandonment.
That could happen.
That.
Yeah.
I could see that happening.
Unfortunately it has happened. We lost a lot of dudes over the time. In 2020, unfortunately, we had one of our mentors pass away from a vehicle accident. And, we never thought about that. We purposefully don't have active duty military so that we don't have guys that are, going through deployment cycles, going overseas, putting themselves in harm's way. And then you have to go to this family and be like, oh, your mentor passed away.
Yeah.
So that was never a factor in our minds. Obviously life happens and things happen, but we never saw that coming. And so his mentee was very young at the time. He still is, but he was 6 years old when they paired up. It was our fifth adventure that we had, and they were a great pair. And so the child actually never met his father. His father died, the tragic story where it's a couple weeks before he comes home from deployment, and the only interaction he had with his son was via FaceTime. And so he does have an older brother, which, had to go through that heavy loss as well. But, he never met his father. And so, he has this father figure of, this guy that comes in, and he was very, again, they were a great pair. He was very proactive he would go to his rugby games. He would do 5Ks with him and his family. And just to see that bond was great. And so the worst thing, we were actually
a second loss
out of town when it happened, and we got a call, or I got a text from one of our other mentors who was his friend, the guy that brought him in, and he's like, "Hey, you got to call me right away." And so I ended up calling him, and he told me what happened, and unfortunately it was the morning of the 4th of July, like 5 a.m, and he was a firefighter with Valley Center, and he was driving home from his shift, and he was on his motorcycle, and he was in a collision. So he didn't technically get hit, but there's a driver who I believe was under the influence that hit another car, and then he went into that. So that was devastating, and then having to call up our Gold Star spouse and let them know what had happened. It's just, they've already gone through that tragedy already, and it's so, I can't even imagine, right? I can't imagine how challenging and difficult that is.
Though, that's very reflective of you, because it's already difficult as it is to try to bring the bad news to someone, but knowing that they've experienced that before, it's different. It's different. And I think when you physically have gone and experienced something like that, there's a different level of apathy. And, from the bottom of my heart, I really do appreciate for what you're doing. I think, there's not enough organizations in what you do in touching people's hearts and touching the kids' hearts, touching the moms' hearts. I've been a part of multiple organizations, and I've yet to see the type of organic love that occurs in your organization. And I really appreciate that.
Well, we obviously, we're not helping the masses. There's only so many people that we can help, being such a small organization. But what's important to us is we've grown very good relationships with the Gold Star families, with the veterans. And so, we don't want them to be just another number to an organization. And granted, there's so many great nonprofits out there that are helping that community. Especially with Active Valor, we wanted to make sure we focus on none of the grieving.
Yeah,
it's you come to us, they know they're going to have a great day. They're going to be
you guys
with
are
other
filling
kids.
such a huge gap, because you participate with me with SEAL Future Fund, and in those types of situations, it's the transitioning veteran coming from special ops into the civilian world. Okay, that's one need, right? And we focus a lot of times just on the veteran, and there's not a lot of organizations that focus on the families, the kids, and the veteran at the same time. I've yet to see something like that as well. So my hat's off to you on that one.
Thank you. Oh, honestly, we've been super blessed. That's really all it is. We're not on paper a faith-based organization, but I mean our entire thing runs off our faith, and I mean having God has helped us along the way so much. He has put so many things in place, especially
I hope so.
when we get stressed out and there's things that happen, they get fixed, and they always get fixed in time.
Yeah.
And so we've been very blessed to just, we feel like we were meant to do this, and that's why we continue to do this regardless of how challenging it gets. Whether, we make a lot of money in donations or not, we're at a place where we put ourselves in a position to where we have no real overhead. We work at a home, we don't have to pay for leasing out an office. And then being able to have jobs that are so flexible where we can take the time and make sure that we're not slacking on that end, and making sure that when it comes time for it, like we're gearing up for an adventure, a lot of energy and time, because whether it's, after the workday, but it's as much effort as we can possibly give into it. And,
so where does somebody go if they want to participate in something like this, or even being a participant to help you? Like you had the aliens where they were just volunteers.
So as far as the volunteer basis goes, we actually had a lot of active duty volunteer for the role player portions, or a lot of friends and family that are here in the area as well. And there's really no place for them to go. We don't have like a volunteer sign up sheet on our list. We've had a lot of people reach out via email and they're like, hey, I work with this group and we would love to be a part of it. Great. That's a great resource. We put them on a list. It's like, so we know who to contact when we do need help. So yeah, there's really nowhere to go, because we also don't advertise our events. There's never anything on our website that's like, hey, on this date is our next adventure. We just don't want that public. That's another reason why we've never had media at our events. And we don't want to take away from what we're trying to do. Yeah. Granted, we've been on the news a couple times. It would be, and we've had our veterans and Gold Star families would have zero problem with us having it there. It's for us on the back end. It's just one more thing to deal with when in the days of the events are chaos for us. So we wouldn't even have time to deal with media and things like that unless we had dedicated people that can help facilitate that. But as far as the events go, they're not public knowledge. So that's really on us to, if people would like to volunteer, they can always, shoot us an email from our website. And
which website?
So it's activevalor.com.
Okay.
ACTIVE. So active, not act of, like that god awful Navy SEAL movie.
Yeah. Act of. It's not act of, it's active.
Active Valor. So it's just activevalor.com. It's Active Valor on Instagram, Active Valor on Facebook, LinkedIn as well. So, people can always reach out to us on our social media platforms. And, but as far as if there is a sign up sheet on our website for the veterans to apply. So, that's one resource they can go to. And it gives a little more information about kind of what goes into the process, and commitment wise, it's so minimal. It's face value minimum is 3 days a year. Mm-hmm. You have the 3 big adventures per year is what we hope for. Obviously not, again, people have lives, people have families, things happen. But we try to give enough leeway beforehand so people can work with their calendars and their schedules to make sure. And we have some guys that, one of our mentors who's a firefighter up in Orange County, that guy will be there no matter what. If he's working, he's going to switch shifts. His shifts, I feel so bad because there's been multiple times when he gets off the shift, has enough time to go home and shower, and then he'll drive down to San Diego for the adventure with no sleep or anything. But he's like there no matter what.
Can't let the kids down.
Yeah.
Basically, bro, you can't let the kids down.
But we hope for the 3 days a year. In between the adventures, we like to do smaller things, whether it's always things where we can go to. We can bring a group to indoor rock climbing gym or the wind tunnel, something where there's no stress on us of putting things together. So we just show up, let them have a good time.
How can someone support you at the leadership level? So if a location like a rock climbing location or an archery thing or whatever how can someone help you that has one of those businesses that, participates with kids that can be a host with Active Valor?
Right. And that's, again, it's if people are hearing this and they can either go to our website or you can email info@activevalor.com. It goes directly to us, and we can talk about it. Locations are very hard for us because our groups are sometimes massive. Sometimes they're up for plus 200 people, and so finding locations to, one, aren't public, and two, have enough space to kind of house everyone.
Yeah.
And it all depends on what the activity is. So we can work around locations. Normally we have the activity in mind, and it's like, all right, where can we facilitate this? It's land isn't always just the best thing. Like, we can't do anything if it's just a plot of land. We can do something like the treasure hunt we did the first time, but it really just depends on how elaborate we're going for that event and how much space we need. If we need buildings, if we need we need a classroom or we need a spot for lunch, things like that. So location is probably one of our most challenging aspects, is just finding the right spot. We have had to double up on locations for multiple events, which is fine. We just make the event different. So things like that work. And then it's like, how much does it cost to rent it? Our last event we had on Father's Day. So we always do our Father's Day adventure every year, the Saturday before Father's Day. And this last event, we were at the Rancho Bernardo golf course, which was just,
I couldn't make
super
it. My wife
fun.
had
You were sick. You're
like a week long migraine, dude. Oh my God, it still suck.
Yeah, it was
I would feel so bad, bro, having a good time and then come home and then just be like, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be good.
Well, yeah, it is what it is, man.
I was bummed.
You missed a good one. I will say that, because we had all the kids and vets paired, and they were cruising around the course in golf carts.
Yeah.
And then we set up different games on 10 of the different holes there. So we had to rent out the entire golf course. I mean, we spent about $20,000 on this adventure.
Wow.
And it's a lot.
I'm telling you guys go all out, bro. It's so sick. I can't wait to, show some of the video of that, because I think that's when people really kind of get an idea of what it is.
Right.
And it's different. It's an experience.
Yeah. Hearing it is one thing. Visually seeing it is a lot better. But man, when you're there and you can actually witness like the behind the camera stuff that goes on, the conversations that happen, like it's so
the kids
rewarding.
are just like, and you're like, man, my kids don't have that much candy, but this is okay. This kid's hyped up. And I think to myself, this is probably one of the few times during the year that this kid just gets to go all out.
Right.
Like, wow. And I get to be a participant in this. Like, I feel unworthy, but it's
Don't
still
feel that way, because it's without guys like you that we wouldn't exist. Right.
Yeah.
Without having dedicated people that will take time out of their schedules away from their families to go press into the lives of these other families. And it takes a lot, and we greatly value and appreciate all of the sacrifices that all the vets have made outside of their time in service, but now even in their everyday life to be there for us. Because they're not just there for the kids, they're there for us as well. And we couldn't ask for a better group of guys. And so we're just hoping to add on to that.
So for anybody that's watching now, and you're thinking about trying to do stuff with vets or do stuff as far as an organization, I think some of the takeaways for me really was about that, understanding what the mission really is and being true to that mission and looking at it from a variety of different angles and consistency. And I think being true to the mission is probably one of the best takeaways. I can tell you that I can really appreciate that. So that's why we create the lab, is just so we can have a good idea of what the magical ingredients are that is really serving the world. It's serving a community. And I thank you for sharing your story.
No, thank you for giving me a platform, and it's always great talking about it. And I don't talk about it enough, and it's
I had to
being
get you out
being right here
You're
in San Diego.
You're a humble guy, but I had to pull you out.
I appreciate. I really do. Again, being able to just share what we do and share the stories of the lives we've been able to touch, and we also want to extend that out. So there's, like I said, if you're a veteran in the area and you plan on staying in the area, we'd love to talk to you about it and to grow our active Valor family.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. God bless you and your family.
Oh, you as well.